He who is not attached to the fruits of his actions, who remains content and unattached, he truly lives in freedom. Need is loud, it's anxious, it clings, it makes demands on people, time, outcomes. But when you need nothing, not because you've given up, but because you realize you already are enough, everything begins to move in your direction. There is a paradox at the heart of life. The moment you stop chasing, you start attracting, not out of manipulation, not out of indifference, but because your energy shifts from desperation to peace, from lack to sufficiency. Most people don't understand the magnetic power of calm confidence. It's easy to believe that effort equals reward, that if you just try harder, grip tighter, hustle more, the universe will finally bend. But life doesn't respond to force. It responds to frequency. And the frequency of need is very different from the frequency of wholeness. Need says, I am incomplete without this. Wholeness says, I'd love to receive it, but I'm fine either way. That difference changes everything. Think about the time something finally came to you when you stopped trying so hard. The relationship, the opportunity, the clarity. When you released control, life flowed. That's not an accident, that's alignment. Because when you no longer act from fear of not having, you stop pushing things away with your own energy. Needing repels, inner stillness draws in. This isn't about pretending. It's not about denying your desires. It's about detaching your identity from your outcomes. You can want the relationship, the job, the money, the recognition, but don't need it. Don't build your worth around it. Because the moment your happiness is tethered to something external, you become a prisoner of circumstance, and that's the fastest way to drain your power. Wholeness is attractive. Emotional independence is magnetic. People feel it when you walk into a room and your peace isn't for sale. When you show up already fulfilled, already centered, already enough. That kind of energy can't be faked. It's earned through discipline, healing, and deep self-awareness. This principle appears in every great teaching in the Tao Te Ching, in Stoic philosophy, in the lives of the mystics and the monks. Not because it's esoteric, but because it's universal. Needing nothing is not apathy. It's mastery. It's what happens when you realize your true self isn't missing anything. It's what happens when you understand that you don't chase abundance, you align with it. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means giving space. Space for miracles, for redirection, for higher outcomes than your ego could ever design. Sometimes what you desperately want isn't denied, it's just delayed until your energy no longer distorts the process. So the work is inward. Build yourself, heal your triggers, strengthen your center, learn to be okay in the stillness, learn to enjoy your own company, learn to trust what's not visible. Yet, when you do, you begin to radiate an energy that calls things to you effortlessly, not because you forced them, but because you stopped blocking them. This mindset is a shift from force to flow, from desperation to trust, from gripping to allowing. When you walk through life with open hands instead of clenched fists, you make room for everything you used to chase. Needing nothing isn't the end of desire, it's the beginning of deeper alignment. When you live this way, you'll notice the world begins to meet you differently. Opportunities arise, people show up, the right doors open. Why? Because you're no longer seeking permission. You've already claimed it within. That's the secret. When you need nothing, you lack nothing. You become a force. You stop asking life to fill your gaps and start offering something real. Your presence, your peace, your power. That's when everything begins to change. Not just because the world responds to you, but because you've already changed yourself. Neediness is a signal to the world that something within us is lacking. It's an energy, not just a feeling, a magnetic force that tells everything around you, I'm incomplete. But here's the paradox. The more you need something, the more you unconsciously push it away. Why? Because neediness creates tension, and tension disrupts flow. Detachment, on the other hand, is not about apathy. It's about spaciousness. It's about creating the inner room for life to surprise you. When you're deeply attached to an outcome, your thoughts become rigid, your energy becomes controlling, and your actions start to stem from fear rather than trust. Think about how you feel when you're desperate for someone to text you back. You're not just hoping, they must respond because your peace depends on it. But that emotional contraction doesn't draw them closer. It actually repels. Why? Because life responds best to relaxed intention, not clinging desperation. Detachment is the opposite of control. It's not the absence of desire, but the release of obsession. It's saying, I want this, but I don't need it to be whole. That shift in internal dialogue changes the energy you emit, and energy is the true language of the universe. When you're detached, your actions come from clarity, not chaos. Your mind becomes still, your body relaxes, and most importantly, you become receptive. Not passive, receptive. open to receiving what aligns with you rather than forcing something that doesn't. Abundance is not just about money or material wealth. It's the fullness of life, the richness of peace, the depth of joy, the connection to purpose. And that kind of abundance flows into environments that are calm, spacious, and undemanding. When you detach from need, you shift your vibration into trust. You communicate to life, I am ready and I trust the process. That trust is fertile soil. That calm expectancy is the open gate. Think of a river. When you block it with walls of fear, timelines, and desperation, the water can't flow freely. But when you remove those blocks, when you release the need for control, the current returns. The river knows where to go. Your job is not to force its direction, but to clear your inner landscape so that it can reach you. People feel the difference too. You can sense when someone is trying too hard, when their presence is laced with need. It's uncomfortable. It feels heavy. But when someone walks in and they radiate inner peace, when they're centered in themselves and not asking for approval, you feel drawn to them. Why? Because detachment is magnetic. It whispers confidence. It suggests, I'm whole already. I'm not trying to take anything from you. That energy is irresistible. Even in your goals, detachment is a form of wisdom. You set the vision, take aligned action, and release the results. You don't tie your worth to whether it manifests tomorrow or in 10 years. You don't use the absence of immediate results as proof that it's not working. You honor divine timing. This doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to stay centered in who you are, no matter what comes or goes. Detachment says, I will not give my power away to outcomes I cannot control. And that is one of the most powerful declarations you can make. Because when you stop begging life to give you what you think you lack, life starts offering you things you never even thought to ask for. In that space where you no longer grip, no longer chase, no longer ache with need, abundance finds you. It flows naturally, effortlessly. Not because you stopped wanting, but because you started allowing. You cleared the noise, calmed the fear, and made room. And in that room, life begins to dance. We live in a world that teaches us to chase status, chase validation, chase love, chase wealth. From a young age, we're conditioned to believe that everything meaningful lies outside of us, somewhere out there waiting to be earned or achieved. So we start running, constantly reaching, constantly comparing, convinced that if we can just grab the next thing, we'll finally feel full. But here's the truth most people miss. The most magnetic, powerful people you will ever meet are not those who chase. They are the ones who remember that everything they need is already within them. Real power does not scream, it does not prove, it does not hustle for attention, it radiates, it's felt. It moves quietly, deeply, and unmistakably. You don't walk away from someone with true inner power, remembering what they wore or how loudly they spoke. You remember how they made you feel safe, seen, calm, curious, inspired. That kind of energy doesn't come from how many followers someone has or how much money they've made. It comes from inner alignment, from a person who has made peace with who they are, regardless of what they have. Wholeness is a quiet confidence. It's not walking into a room thinking you're better than anyone else. It's walking in with no need to compare at all. It's knowing that your presence speaks before you do, because it's not fragmented by insecurity or masked by performance. When you're whole on the inside, you're not trying to impress. You're simply expressing. And expression is freedom. Expression is magnetism. The people who attract the most opportunities, relationships, abundance are the ones who aren't desperate for any of it because their identity is not attached to the outcome. They don't need a job title to feel successful. They don't need someone's attention to feel attractive. They don't need applause to feel worthy. They already are, and that knowing liberates them. And in that liberation, they become incredibly attractive, not in a shallow surface way, but in an energetic. People feel it. Life feels it. When you stop seeking externally what you haven't cultivated internally, the game changes. You begin to reclaim your energy. You stop outsourcing your joy to other people's opinions. You stop tying your peace to things that can be taken away. And in doing so, you become unshakable, not because life stops testing you, but because your worth is no longer up for negotiation. Think about the sun. It doesn't go around begging the earth to acknowledge it. It just rises, shines, and everything grows in response. That's what wholeness is. A self-contained radiance, a presence that uplifts without performing, a light that warms without needing to be noticed. This doesn't mean you won't still have goals. It doesn't mean you won't strive or evolve, but it means you'll no longer be striving to become, you'll be striving from a place of already being. That's a different energy. One is exhausting, the other is empowered. One is anxious, The other is anchored. You'll know you're stepping into this power when the need to convince fades, when silence feels stronger than argument, when solitude feels fuller than crowds, when your standards rise, not because you're demanding more, but because you realize you already deserve more. That's the essence of inner wholeness. It redefines your boundaries, your pace, your circle, your voice. And the most beautiful part, when you stop chasing, what's meant for you starts arriving. Because your energy is no longer saying I'm lacking, it's saying I'm ready. And that shift unlocks doors force could never open. Life doesn't respond to pressure, it responds to presence. When you are rooted in yourself, you become a vessel through which life can move effortlessly. No resistance, no noise, just clarity and flow. So remember, you don't have to shout to be powerful. You don't have to chase to be chosen. You don't have to prove to be worthy. Come home to yourself. Cultivate peace within your own chest. Learn to love your own silence. Stand tall in your solitude. And let your life be a mirror of the truth that was never outside of you. It was always within you. When you stop chasing, something subtle but profound begins to happen. Life starts to respond to your energy, not your desperation. And that shift, though invisible to the eye, changes everything. You stop attracting from a place of lack and start receiving from a place of alignment. It's as if the universe breathes a sigh of relief when you no longer beg it to notice you, but instead join it in harmony. You become a participant in the natural rhythm of life, rather than a restless disruptor trying to force outcomes before their time. Desperation is loud. It leaks out of your tone, your posture, your choices. It says, I don't believe this can happen unless I push, beg, or manipulate. But life doesn't reward force, it rewards faith. Desperation repels because it's rooted in the belief that something is missing. Energy, however, aligned, calm, focused energy is magnetic. It speaks a language deeper than words. It communicates trust, presence, confidence. It says, I already know who I am, I already know what I carry, and I trust that what's meant for me is finding its way to me. It's not that effort is bad, but effort born from desperation is draining. It's effort that never feels enough, never pauses to breathe, never allows rest. It runs in circles, not progress. But when effort comes from energy, clean, rooted energy, it becomes sustainable. It becomes inspired. You act not to prove, but to express. You move not to escape, but to expand. When you let go of chasing, you create space. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. That space is where new ideas are born. That space is where insight lands. That space is where people feel your authenticity instead of your agenda. Most of us don't realize that in constantly doing, forcing, grabbing, we block the very things we're hoping to receive. Because desperation carries fear, and fear builds wall. But trust opens doors. Think about it. Have you ever seen someone walk into a room and instantly draw everyone's attention, not because they were loud or flashy, but because their energy was calm, centered, sure? That's what it means to live without chasing. You become a beacon, not a beggar. You attract what aligns with you, not just what's available. And that distinction is crucial because when you chase, you often settle, but when you align, you discern. This doesn't mean giving up your goals. It means releasing the fear that says you have to clutch them for dear life. It means being deeply committed, but not attached. It means showing up fully, doing your part, but letting go of the need to control every outcome. It means understanding that your vibration is your invitation. What you are internally is what echoes back to you externally. It's easy to confuse movement with progress, but if your movement is fueled by panic, by scarcity, by unworthiness, you're not moving forward. You're running in fear. And life doesn't reward panic. It rewards presence. It responds to the person who says, I trust the timing. I trust myself. I'm becoming the kind of person who is ready for what I desire, not just desperate for it. You'll start noticing shifts. People will treat you differently. New doors will open, not because you knocked harder, but because you stopped trying to break them down and started becoming the person who naturally walks through them. Opportunities will arise, not because you demanded them, but because your energy quietly communicated, I'm ready now. And most importantly, you will feel different, lighter, freer, no longer tangled in the anxiety of waiting or striving. You'll start experiencing a quiet kind of joy, the joy that doesn't depend on circumstances, but flows from within, the joy that says, even if nothing changes today, I am already enough. That's when life smiles back. That's when reality begins to bend, not for the desperate, but for the aligned. So stop chasing, start aligning. Tune into who you are becoming, not just what you are pursuing. Let your presence do the heavy lifting. Let your peace become the platform from which everything unfolds. Because when your energy is clean, calm, and clear, life doesn't just respond, it rushes in.